when you put all those five things together, it's SUPER, super experiences. And if you can build those, I guarantee you will not have to worry about Amazon or Mercado Libre or anyone else, because you're going to have customers that love you.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos a este episodio de Retail Stories. Estoy muy contento de darles la bienvenida en esta primera entrevista del año y debo de compartirles que estoy muy emocionado porque en esta ocasión iniciamos con una entrevista de superlujo. Ahora les presentaré a nuestro invitado, pero nada más les puedo decir que lo llevo siguiendo durante los últimos 5 años y que es una de las autoridades más reconocidas en términos de la evaluación del comportamiento del consumidor para retail específicamente. Ahora les contaré un poquito de la gran persona que tenemos enfrente. Bienvenidos sean todos a esta conversación. Quiero compartirles que para todos los que recibieron esta invitación es porque forman parte de un grupo en el cual creo que tenemos mucho que aportar al retail en México y en Latinoamérica, así que no dejen de hacer sus preguntas a través del chat, son totalmente bienvenidas y yo elegiré las mejores preguntas para hacérselas directamente a Doug Stephens. Se darán cuenta que esta transmisión se está realizando en este momento a través de Zoom y además está siendo transmitida a través de Facebook y otros canales, así que sean todos muy bienvenidos. Y bueno, el tema del día de hoy es un tema del cual todos estamos pensando, del cual todos tenemos una opinión y el cual nos afecta prácticamente a todos. Y la pregunta es, ¿cómo voy a hacer para sobrevivir en el retail con todos los cambios que están viviendo? ¿Cómo sobrevivir en el futuro del retail? ¿De acuerdo? En esta conversación vamos a explorar con Doug cuáles son las estrategias que pueden llevar a las empresas de retail, a las empresas inmobiliarias, a las empresas dedicadas a la distribución de productos, a poder no solamente sobrevivir en el mundo en el que estamos viviendo, sino también a crecer en esta nueva era. Déjenme les presento brevemente a quién tenemos enfrente, solamente para que se den una idea de el gran privilegio que tenemos. Doug es uno de los futuristas de la industria de retail más importantes del mundo. Su trabajo y su pensamiento han influido en muchos de los retailers, agencias y marcas internacionales en empresas como Walmart, Google, L'Oreal, BMW y LVMH, entre muchas otras. Antes de fundar su consultora que se llama Retail Prophet, el Profeta del Retail, Doug pasó más de 20 años en la industria minorista, ocupando puestos de liderazgo internacional senior. Actualmente, Doug está escribiendo su tercer libro que se llamará Resurrecting Retail. Cómo lograr que renazca el retail. Y hablará justamente acerca de el futuro de los negocios en un mundo post-pandémico. ¿De acuerdo? Asimismo, Doug es autor de 2 libros de superventas internacionales, entre ellos este que se llama Reengineering Retail, Regenerando el Retail, un libro extraordinario que les recomiendo mucho, así como un libro publicado en 2013 llamado Retail Revival, que habla acerca de cómo reimaginar el retail para enfrentar una nueva era del consumismo, una nueva era del comportamiento del consumidor. Entre otras cosas, además de ser escritor, Doug es presentador de una serie de podcast llamada Business of Fashion y Retail Reborn, el retail renacido. Entre otros medios, hay varios medios internacionales que han publicado las perspectivas de Doug al respecto de negocios y de comercio minorista. Sus publicaciones han aparecido en medios de comunicación como The New York Times, la BBC, TechCrunch, The Wall Street Journal y Fast Company. Así que estoy verdaderamente feliz, verdaderamente honrado de tener con nosotros a Doug Stephens, el profeta del retail. Doug, thank you very much for being with us. I'm very happy of having you on board on this podcast. As I told you, I've been following you for more than 5 years, and I'm very happy to have you here with us. You're very welcome.
It's a pleasure to join you, Carlos. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So, Doug, let's begin. I want to start by asking you one question. How did you start on this consumer behavior industry? How did you start? How did you become the retail prophet?
Thank you. So I spent about 20 to 25 years, I'm almost losing track now, but about 20 years in the retail industry, working in multiple disciplines in both Canada and the United States. And when I finished up my corporate career, it was around 2008, in the midst of another crisis, you may recall. And it occurred to me after that much time in the industry that retail as an industry was really short-sighted. You know, it was an industry that was very much quarter to quarter, earnings report to earnings report, without much concern for the distant future. And so I felt that with everything that was going on in 2008, with the financial crisis, with changing demographics, the technological landscape changing, the media landscape blowing up with social media, I really felt that there was the need for a voice in the industry that was looking out on a farther horizon. And so with that, I founded Retail Profit in 2009. And the intention has always been to sort of really try and look out onto a 5 to 10 year horizon and put together a contextual picture of how things were changing in order to take those insights out to corporations and allow executives to build strategy against that future.
Thank you. Le pregunté a Doug acerca de cómo inició en esta industria de evaluar y tratar de comprender el comportamiento del consumidor y de tratar de entender el futuro del retail. Y me dice, en 2008, cuando él estaba cerrando su experiencia corporativa en empresas de retail, en ciertas marcas transnacionales como las que les platiqué, se dio cuenta que esta industria de retail verdaderamente tenía una visión muy pequeña. Solamente veía trimestre a trimestre las ventas de este trimestre contra las del año pasado, pero no se estaba dando cuenta de las transformaciones que estaban ocurriendo. No se estaba dando cuenta de la transformación digital que era inminente en ese momento, a pesar de que estaba en una crisis. Y eso fue lo que lo motivó a iniciar con este trabajo de, si se puede decir, tratar de pronosticar el futuro de esta industria. So, Doug, let me ask you the first question that I know you've been asked so many times, and I know that many of us have in our minds, all of us that are involved in retail. What's going to happen to stores in the future? I know this is a very basic question, but I know it's very important. What's going to happen to stores in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a great question, and it's particularly important as we go through this crisis. And I think you're right. A lot of people are wondering, does the physical store still have a vital role in terms of how brands go to market? My belief is we have to back up even further than the pandemic. For at least the last 10 years, as the industry has been talking about omni-channel, I've sort of taken a different view. I think that omni-channel sort of assumes that retailers are the ones responsible for building channels to consumers, and that consumers are supposed to operate within those channels, whether it's mobile or online or physical. I've taken a different view of it. In my opinion, what we're really seeing is that the role of the physical store is actually trading places with the role of media. And what I mean by that is that traditionally, media has always been something that brands will go out on the open market and buy in an effort to drive consumers to a point of distribution, whether that's a website or a physical store. But we live in a world today where media, in virtually every form that, all of the apps on my phone are the store. Media is the store. When I'm watching a TikTok video, I can buy directly from that TikTok video. I can buy directly from my Instagram feed, from my Facebook page, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to a large extent, depending on the category, I can actually buy things in a more informed way as a consumer through media channels, oftentimes than I can in a store where I'm supposed to be getting help. So media has and continues to become the store, but that doesn't negate the value of physical stores. but it does change it. And what's actually happening in reverse, Carlos, is that stores, physical stores, are becoming a really powerful media channel for brands, a place where brands can communicate their story, where they can engage consumers in experiences with their products and their services, where they can entertain consumers and really draw them into the brand ecosystem. So the answer to your question is yes, stores absolutely have a value, but it's not simply the value of sales anymore. It's a marketing value. It's the value of customer acquisition in the store, but we have to provide something that is truly unique and remarkable that brings consumers in.
Thank you very much. Lo que me responde Doug es, le pregunté a Doug qué le va a pasar a las tiendas. La pregunta que todos tenemos en nuestras mentes, la pregunta de la que todos filosofamos y todos decimos que sabemos. Y Doug me dice, hay una transformación muy importante. En el mundo en el que vivimos hoy, los medios de publicidad son una tienda. Doug decía, él puede entrar, estar viendo su feed en TikTok y simplemente desde ahí darle clic y comprar un producto. Entonces, los medios de publicidad hoy son una tienda. Y lo que dice Doug es, de la misma forma, al revés. Ahora la tienda es el mejor medio de publicidad de una marca. Lo que dice es, la tienda va a permitirnos... va a ser un canal para atraer clientes, para obtener clientes, mas no necesariamente tiene el único valor de generar transacciones. Now, let me ask you something, Doug, and I think this is another very important question for retailers. If the store is no longer just a transaction point, then are the leases still worth what they were worth before? Am I still going to pay as much as I pay right now to the landlords to have a point for media instead of sales?
It's another great question. They could be worth more. Leases could actually be worth more. The problem in the shopping center industry, and frankly, the problem in the commercial real estate industry as it applies to retail, is right now we live in a world where in-store sales are going like this, and they have been over at least the last decade, perhaps longer. The problem with that is that a lot of lease structures are based on that sales volume, right? A lot of leases are based on percentage of sales. As retailers move over to this idea that physical retail is actually becoming an effective and cost-efficient means of customer acquisition. It's not just purely sales, but bringing consumers over to your brand, presenting a brand presence in the market. We know, for example, that if you open a new store in a given market, that the online effect of that can be anywhere between 27 and 35% of an increase in online sales just because you opened a physical store within a market.
That's the halo effect, right? That's what
the halo effect, exactly. Yeah, the International Council of Shopping Centers did a significant study on that not that long ago and determined that, yeah, between 27 and 35% increase in online sales because of the presence of a physical store. So what that means is that, and this is what we're working with a lot of retailers right now, to quantify the value of their stores beyond sales. So yes, of course, you want to account for sales, of course, but you also want to account for the media value of that store, which is in essence the number of consumer impressions that you generate each year, multiplied by the value of each of those impressions to your brand, and then ultimately modified by your Net Promoter Score. So you come out with a value that says, let's say for round numbers, we sold $1 million worth of products in this store, and the store itself gave us another $2 million worth of media value based on the number of consumer impressions that we generated. So now what we're really saying is that if retailers are valuing those physical assets and the productivity of those assets differently, then the commercial real estate industry needs to start that way of thinking as well. And that we need to start getting into the mindset that we need to base rents on the amount of exposure that a brand is likely to get within a certain location, the value of that property from a media standpoint, In the same way that we've been doing this for years, in the media landscape, we charge different rates for advertising on television, depending on what time of day or what the event is. Super Bowl ads are more expensive than regular ads, right? Because it's all about positioning and the number of impressions that you're likely to generate. So again, I'm sorry for the long answer, but it's not an easy thing to explain sometimes. But yeah, we need to start basing rental rates on the media value that a store represents for a brand.
Great, thank you very much. La pregunta que le hice a Doug es si el punto de venta ya no es un punto de transacciones, ya no es un punto para vender nada más, sino es un punto para obtener clientes, para involucrarlos con mi marca que pueden llegar a comprar en algún medio distinto. Entonces, se tienen que mantener la forma en la que se cobran las rentas. Y la respuesta que me dio es que, de hecho, no necesariamente tienen que reducirse las rentas, sino que quizás se deben de incrementar. Algo en lo que Doug ha estado trabajando junto con muchas marcas con las que trabaja actualmente es en medir el valor que tiene el valor que tiene un espacio físico para una marca. Él dice, un espacio físico que está atrayendo un cierto número de impresiones de clientes, es decir, un cierto número de interacciones con clientes, que son interacciones mucho más profundas que las que se tienen en un celular. A partir de esas interacciones, si puedo medir cuánto me compra este cliente a partir de haberme conocido, y después dice que lo ajusta con el valor del NPS, el nivel de satisfacción del cliente. Entonces, Doug está trabajando en cómo dimensionar la importancia de una tienda o el valor que una tienda tiene para una marca con base en los resultados que le puede generar, aunque no sean en ese momento. De hecho, Doug nos compartía que hay un efecto conocido como el efecto halo, en el que el consejo de centros comerciales en Estados Unidos ha demostrado que una vez que hay una tienda física en una ubicación geográfica, las ventas en línea de esa misma marca alrededor de esa tienda crecen de 27 a 35%. Así que el punto de venta físico sí tiene un valor, y lo que plantea Doug es que quizás los dueños de centros comerciales o de espacios comerciales deberían de replantear la forma en la que cobran la renta y alejarse de cobrar las rentas de forma variable por ventas y empezar a cobrar las rentas como si esto fuera un espacio de publicidad. Now, Doug, let me go to a different question. So you're telling me the story is media. The story is an opportunity for us to engage the customer. The story is an opportunity for us to attract the customer. In what percentage do you believe that retailers right now actually take advantage of that opportunity? Because we've been hearing the word customer experience, at least in my perspective, for over 14 years now. I've been promoting customer experience for 14 years now, but still you go to a mall and you see places that are just product warehouses. So how much are companies actually taking advantage of this, and when will they start, or what's going to happen if they don't?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, if you go to the average shopping center, you visit the average retailer, you're absolutely right. There really is no experience, because retailers still, for the most part, most retailers tend to focus very much on product. So when they're designing their stores, they're thinking about sales per square foot. They're thinking about how they're going to merchandise the store. Where are the products going to go? How are products going to be merchandised? What they're not thinking about is experiences per square foot, something we were talking about before the session. So, what are we going to have consumers do in the store? What are they going to engage with? What are they going to see and smell and taste and touch? How can we allow them to personalize their experience while they're in the store? What are some things that we can do that would be really surprising and delightful for that customer through this experience? Retailers aren't thinking about that, generally speaking, because it's a different skill set. And it really means that you have to kind of put the product aside for the time being. It's not that we don't want to feature products and we don't want to sell products, But we have to start thinking, first of all, in terms of how we animate the experience for the consumer. And I just want to make one thing clear too, Carlos. You know, we tend to think sometimes about experiential stores being flagship stores. And I think it's important that we dispel that sort of notion. Um, you know, we're not talking about the aesthetics of the store. We're not just talking about building a big, beautiful store and calling that a customer experience. It's really about the mechanics of the experience. And what I've determined is there are basically 5 elements to any remarkable experience, whether it's in food and beverage, hospitality, travel and tourism, or in retail. The 5 elements are essentially this. First of all, surprising things happen. So if I go into a shoe store, for example, something pleasant that I didn't expect as a customer happens in that experience. There are surprises that are built into the experience. The next piece is that it's unique, that it's a unique experience that is very much a trademark for the brand. I mean, think about how long in the retail industry we talked about the Apple store experience, because it was really something that was almost a patented Apple design in that store experience. So whatever we do needs to be unique to the brand. It can't feel like it's someone else's experience. The third element is personalization. If we think back on most great experiences that we've had, in most cases, there's something personal about it. It resonates personally with us. So giving customers the ability to personalize, customize, or really just using great data to make them feel as though this experience is just for them. The fourth element is engagement. Find as many ways as you possibly can to engage the customer's mind, their body, and their heart in the shopping experience. So give them opportunities, if they choose to really engage with the products in the store, the experiences in the store, and make it memorable. And then finally, the last piece is repeatability. Don't build an experience that you can't execute with excellence at least 80 to 90% of the time. So we have to not just build fancy looking stores, but we have to build experiences that we can execute perfectly every single time. Just like a Ritz-Carlton hotel experience is all about execution. So when you put all those 5 things together, it's SUPER, super experiences. And if you can build those, I guarantee you will not have to worry about Amazon or Mercado Libre or anyone else, because you're going to have customers that love you.
Wow, wow, thank you, thank you. La respuesta, le pregunté a Doug si la tienda hoy es el medio de publicidad, si deberíamos de estar pagando por estar en un centro comercial o en un punto, en una calle para poder interactuar con el cliente. La pregunta que le hacía es ¿por qué tantas empresas tienen puntos de venta que no generan ninguna experiencia, que no están involucrando a su cliente, sino que prácticamente le están vendiendo productos? Y la respuesta que me da Doug, que me parece bien interesante, es que verdaderamente la mentalidad con la que fueron creadas estas tiendas y la mentalidad que tenemos en estas empresas es en ventas por metro cuadrado. ¿Cuánto vendí por metro cuadrado? Y entonces, básicamente, lo que las marcas están buscando es, bueno, ¿cuántos productos voy a poner? ¿Qué inventario voy a tener? Estamos teniendo experiencias basadas 100% en el producto. Lo que dice Doug es, vamos a cambiar a experiencias por metro cuadrado. Vamos a cambiar a darle la oportunidad al cliente de probar el producto, de experimentarlo, de poner los productos a un lado. El inventario de productos pasa a tomar un segundo plano en estos momentos. Algo que aclara Doug es, una tienda de experiencia no es la tienda flagship de la marca. No se trata de tener una tienda muy bonita que sea la que promueva la marca, sino plantea que todas las tiendas deben de tener estas características y nos plantea un modelo que él llama el modelo super. ¿Qué significa una tienda con experiencia? Es una tienda con los 5 siguientes elementos. Punto número 1, una tienda donde ocurren sorpresas, donde hay cosas que te sorprenden cuando estás ahí. Una tienda que es única, que lo que ocurre ahí es 100% casi digamos que patentado por esa marca. Nos pone el ejemplo de lo que hace Apple. Cuando tú vas a una tienda Apple, esa experiencia sigue siendo trascendental y tiene muchos años de haber sido creada. Tercero, la P de personalización, que sea una experiencia que se pueda adaptar al cliente. Habla Doug acerca de utilizar medios como la data que tengo del cliente para poderlo servir de la forma que él necesita. Por otro lado viene la E de engagement, de involucramiento. ¿Cómo logro que mi cliente verdaderamente pueda involucrar más partes de su cuerpo, su corazón, su cerebro, sus sentidos adentro de la tienda? ¿Cómo los puedo hacer actuar y tener mayor interacción con la experiencia que le doy? Y la última que me pareció extraordinaria, él la llama repetibilidad. Quiere decir, no crees una experiencia que sea románticamente increíble, que suene muy bonita, pero que no se puede ejecutar. Doug dice, si no puedes ejecutar esta experiencia, al menos en el 90% de las ocasiones cuando un cliente te visita, entonces no es una experiencia súper. Thank you. I love the model. I think it makes a lot of sense. Can you give us an example of a company you've worked with or a company that you know that went from being just a product store to becoming an experiential store? What did they do and what were the results they achieved?
Sure. So, I mean, there are some really good examples out there, but I'll give you one. We worked recently with IKEA, and IKEA, and this is around 2015. IKEA came to us, and they had hit a point in their evolution where their sales were not growing. Their belief at the time was that they had to move off of their current format, and of course, the IKEA format is very much about product. Essentially, their stores are product warehouses. And so when we sat down with them, we noticed that there were a few weaknesses within that format. First of all, it wasn't a format that translated well to urban centers. Stores were too big. And IKEA really did not have a presence in urban centers where there were perhaps younger, more affluent consumers living in smaller spaces that might want IKEA products, but didn't want to drive out to the suburbs, to buy their products from a warehouse. So what we proposed to them was a completely different format, an urban format, 20,000 square feet, that was all focused on planning and personalization of space, where IKEA could work with customers on kitchen projects, bath projects, storage projects, work with the customer in a personal way, plan out the project, give them inspiration. So the store would have lots of room sets and inspiration, but very, very light on product, almost no product at all. And once the plans were made and the customer was happy with it, then all the product could just be shipped in from a nearby store for that project. Completely changed the model for IKEA. So they opened the first store in Manhattan, and the results were such that they've now begun to open 30 more of those around the world. So wow. That's one example of just how sort of looking at things differently, you can not only create a new store format, but it in essence created a new business model for IKEA and opened up an entirely new demographic to their brand. So that's one example.
Wow. Le pregunté a Doug que nos compartiera un ejemplo de una empresa que pasó en su experiencia, pasó de ser una empresa basada en producto a convertirse en una empresa basada en experiencia. Y nos cuenta el caso de IKEA. Esta marca de muebles de Suecia que acaba de llegar a México, por cierto, que es una marca que verdaderamente está basada en producto. Lo que vende esta marca es que tienen productos que son muebles muy baratos que tú mismo armas y básicamente sus tiendas son almacenes. En eso consiste el modelo de IKEA. Y lo que nos dice Doug es que evaluando al consumidor, se dieron cuenta de que había una gran cantidad de personas que necesitaban comprar sus productos, pero que no querían acudir a una de sus tiendas que estaba generalmente en los suburbios de las ciudades. Entonces, en conjunto con Doug, crearon una tienda que está dentro de las ciudades, que tiene una dimensión muchísimo menor que las tiendas tradicionales, que prácticamente no tiene productos, prácticamente no tiene almacén, y es una tienda en la cual los clientes vienen a planear y a diseñar sus espacios. Vienen solamente a personalizar el espacio que quieren tener en su sala, en su cocina o en algún lugar de su casa. Y después de ese proceso, entonces el producto les es entregado directamente en sus casas. Y de esta manera crearon un nuevo concepto, atendieron un nuevo mercado y nos comparte Doug que además ya abrieron 30 puntos de venta más como estos en centros de la ciudad y en lugares que tienen mayor densidad de población, que ha tenido un resultado extraordinario para ellos. Let me ask you something, Doug. When any retailer hears something like take the product out of your store, I'm sure we get very scared. I'm sure we think, come on, if product is what I sell, is what I've been up to for the past X number of years, that's why I'm here. Can you remove the product from your store too early? Or are there some industries where you shouldn't remove it? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
And look, I just want to make one thing clear too, Carlos. There's no such thing as one experience. You know, when we talk about experiential design, it's not as though there's one answer or there's one format or that every store should feel like it's a gallery. That's not the case at all. When we work with brands, we really try to sit down and internalize the brand's story, the brand's history, what the focal point of the brand is. For some brands, it's their service. If it's Nordstrom, for example, it's service-based. For other brands, it's entertainment value. For other brands, it really and truly is about product. So, for example, if you're Dyson, for example, you have beautiful products. I mean, Dyson hair dryers and vacuum cleaners are gorgeous products. So you want those products to be there. You want them to be displayed. But the question for brands is, but what does that mean? Does that mean we just have shelves that have lots of Dyson vacuum cleaners on them? Do we just fill the store with product? Or do we build experiential spaces where consumers can actually try those products, where they can engage with them, where they can feel the technical differences in the product? And I mean, look, this is nothing new. This goes all the way back to the first Apple stores. I mean, put it this way. If somebody had said, you know, I can only imagine the conversation that took place in Apple 30 years ago when someone said, you know, I have an idea. Why don't we take all the products out of their boxes and we'll put all of those products on tables so that consumers can come in and essentially break them. You know, we'll put all of that inventory at risk. We'll create this genius bar where people can come in and ask questions for free of some of our highest paid employees. We'll do away with cash registers because everyone in the store will now have the ability to cash out customers. So no more cash wraps. I mean, those in that time, those would have been insane ideas, you know, and yet Apple, in the interest of thinking differently, decided that that's precisely what they were going to do. They broke all of the conventions in retail. And so that's really what we're saying here. We're saying there's no one size fits all answer, but you have to really ask yourself at the end of the day, what is it exactly that you want the consumer to do through this experience? What is the feeling you want them to leave with? And if they leave a Dyson store so thoroughly convinced that Dyson has the best vacuum cleaners in the world, mission accomplished. That's exactly what you wanted them to leave thinking. But you're not going to achieve that just by having shelves filled with boxes with Dyson vacuum cleaners in them. You have to give experiences to try those products. So you're right. Retailers gravitate towards product, but at the end of the day, you have to think about the bigger idea around what you're selling.
So let me translate. Doug nos dice, quiero hacer una anotación. No hay una talla para todos, no es unitalla, no es que todos tengamos que hacer el mismo cambio, no es que todos tengamos que eliminar los productos de las tiendas. Lo que dice él es que cada que él va a trabajar con una marca, busca comprender la historia de la marca. ¿Qué es lo que la marca quiere que su cliente sienta cuando sale de ahí? Dice, por ejemplo, en el caso de los productos Dyson, que es esta empresa que hace ventiladores, secadoras de pelo, aspiradoras con diseños extraordinarios, si no puedo tocar y ver el producto, la tienda no tiene sentido. El producto es un elemento muy importante de la experiencia que está generando. Entonces, lo que dice es, tampoco necesariamente termines esta conferencia y vayas a retirar el inventario de tus tiendas. Nos platica el caso. Imagínense, él se imagina la conversación de hace 30 años en las oficinas de Apple cuando alguien llegó a proponer, mira, vamos a sacar nuestro inventario, lo vamos a poner en las mesas para que los clientes puedan jugar con ellos, puedan jugar con nuestros productos y básicamente puedan destruirlos, básicamente puedan dañarlos. Además de ello, vamos a poner a nuestros empleados mejor pagados, que son nuestros expertos, en un Genius Bar, en un espacio donde va a haber personas asesorando a los clientes y dándoles recomendaciones y ayudándoles a aprovechar los productos. Entonces, pues seguramente en ese momento sonó verdaderamente ridículo, pero lo que dice Doug es, Apple hizo todo esto con base en su modelo de pensar diferente, de think different. Y aquí es a donde regresa él a pensar, primero tenemos que tener claridad de como marca qué queremos transmitir, qué es aquello que queremos demostrar. Let me ask you another question. I read your book, I think it was released on 2017, Reengineering Retail, and you basically predicted the closing of many companies that are right now closed. Why did they close? What was their big mistake?
You know, what happened to so many of these brands, I mean, especially department stores. So if we look at JCPenney or Macy's, if we go back only 30 years, Macy's was the internet, JCPenney was the internet because it was where you went to expose yourself to the widest variety of choices that you had. If you were looking for a new suit or a new pair of shoes, you started off in a department store most of the time because that's where the greatest number of choices were. But that's not the case anymore. Most shopping journeys now start in digital. And yet Macy's and JCPenney and so many other retailers just never really understood that. They never really understood that they are no longer the starting point. They're not the most convenient. They don't have the widest selection. They don't offer the best service. And they don't, in many cases, even offer the best prices on products. So they essentially lost whatever competitive capability, whatever competitive attributes they had, they lost them. They never reinvented the value. So they never said, okay, but what we do have is we have space, we have these enormous stores, and we have an audience of customers that come into those stores. So if we have space and we have audience, what can we do with that? Can we now convert some of that space to experiential zones where, if you're shopping for appliances, you can try out different appliances. If you're shopping for apparel, well, we've got all kinds of stylists that can work with you and, find the right outfit. They never made any attempt at that. What did they do? They just kept marking down their prices. They kept having more sales, more promotions, more coupons. And eventually it's a downward spiral. You just continue to die and close stores and die some more and close some more stores. So, in 2017, I mean, although, yeah, we look at some of those brands today and we say, wow, he was right. I mean, it was sort of common sense masquerading as insight, to be honest, because so many of those brands were just they weren't bringing anything new to the table.
Le pregunté a Doug acerca de, él pronosticó básicamente en su libro de 2017 el cierre de compañías como Macy's o como JCPenney. Le dije, ¿por qué? ¿Cómo sabías que eso iba a pasar? Y la respuesta que él me da es, estas marcas no lograron comprender que la mayoría de las ocasiones de compra inician en Internet. A diferencia del pasado, ahora la mayoría de los esfuerzos de compra inician de forma digital. Ellos no lo comprendieron. Dice algo que es bien interesante. En su momento, hace 30 años, JCPenney y Macy's eran el Internet. Estos eran los puntos en donde podías encontrar todos los productos y toda la información, muchísimo más que la que podrías encontrar en algún otro lugar. Sin embargo, no se adaptaron y no se dieron cuenta del valor que tenían. Doug nos dice, Estas marcas no se reinventaron y tenían la solución frente a ellos. Ellos ya tenían dos activos que eran muy importantes. Tenían grandes espacios y tenían grandes audiencias. Y la única pregunta que tuvieron que haberse hecho es, ¿cómo puedo aprovechar estas dos para servir a mi cliente, para darle a mi cliente lo que necesita? Entonces, en vez de tener grandes espacios que almacenen lavadoras y secadoras, ¿por qué no mejor tengo un espacio donde los clientes pueden venir a interactuar con ellas, donde los clientes pueden venir a probarlas? ¿Por qué no convierto este lugar en algo que atraiga a los clientes por algo más de lo que es el producto? Y básicamente, desde su perspectiva, esa es la causa por las que estas marcas dejaron de existir. We're talking about experiential retail, which is completely different to product-based retail. What about the talent and the employees? Are they the same? Because probably I'm a 30-year-old company with 100 stores or whatever. I've grown so much. I've had salespeople that are working on commissions and entertain the customer. Are they the same talent? Should I change them? What's your experience on that?
You know, some of those people might be the same, right? Some of those people may be able to do both, but fundamentally, no. We're talking about two different kinds of work, you know, and the way I look at it is this: if you say to an executive, for example, if you were to look at your store, a particular store, and you were to look at that store as being an advertisement, that's its job. It's an advertisement for your brand. It's an advertisement for your products, for the skills of your people, for the uniqueness of your environments. But it's a commercial that runs 12, 14 hours a day, every day. Would you hire the same sort of people to work in that store that you would in any other store? And the answer is inevitably no. We would be looking for people who are maybe more outgoing, more personable, more more willing to play that role of brand ambassador rather than just retail salesperson who's willing to work weekends and work for very little money. So no, I think it's a different skill set entirely. I think it's an elevation of the role of a sales associate, you know, and if we think about it as not just hiring people to work in a store, but casting people for a production, you know, this is a production, and everyone on that stage needs to know their role, their lines, their character, and they need to deliver a great performance every time. So it is a different role. It should pay people more money, and it should demand more of them to do it. But ultimately, those are the people that are going to save your brand.
So, le pregunté a Doug acerca de qué pasa con el talento. Tengo una tienda que solía ser un punto de venta de transacciones en donde tenía vendedores que ganaban una comisión por la venta realizada, y de repente quiero convertir esta tienda en un centro de entretenimiento, en un centro que involucre a los clientes, que los haga interactuar, que los haga participar, que los sorprenda, que sea único, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Y la pregunta que le hice es, ¿el talento es el mismo? ¿Los empleados son los mismos? La respuesta que me da es que puede que haya algunos que sean los mismos, sin embargo, lo más probable es que el talento sea totalmente distinto. Me dijo, imagínate esto, tu tienda ahora la tienes que percibir como un anuncio. Tu tienda es un anuncio que está abierto 12 horas al día y que tiene cierta cantidad de tráfico todos los días. En esa tienda lo que necesitas son vendedores que se conviertan en embajadores de marca, que tienen una personalidad y un carisma totalmente distinto que el que puede tener un vendedor tradicional, que deben de ganar más porque tienen habilidades superiores a las que puede tener un vendedor tradicional. Lo que dice es, más allá de hacer un reclutamiento, ahora tienes que hacer un casting para la producción que estás poniendo enfrente, para la producción, la obra que estás poniendo enfrente. Doug, a very simple but probably not so easy to answer question. How do you measure the success of an experience? If the sales are not being made there, how do I measure the success of my experience?
So I think that we have to do precisely what we've been doing for years in the media market, in the media space. We need to start measuring impressions, and we need to start calculating the value of those impressions. So in my new book, I talk about that. I talk about this notion of valuing impressions. So I'll give you an example. I was talking with a client a few years ago, and they were the chief marketing officer of a major beauty company that has about 12 different brands underneath this major brand. And I asked them, how many people would you say each year go through all of your various locations around the world? And so he took a minute and he estimated, he said, I don't know, maybe 100 million people a year. And so I said, so tell me this. If you were to go to a Madison Avenue advertising agency and you were to sit down with them and say, okay, look, we want to reach 100 million people a year, but not just with a 30-second Facebook ad or, a YouTube pre-roll video. What we want is we want a 20 to 30-minute immersive engagement with that consumer. We really want them to understand our brand and our products and our people and our culture, what we stand for. And ultimately, we want to draw them into our brand. How much would that cost to build a campaign to reach that many people each year with that kind of experience? And he said, it would be ridiculous. It would be, outside of virtually any company's budget to do that. But here's the thing, they're already doing that. The problem is they're not measuring it. They're not measuring the values. So what do we need to know? We need to know how many consumers had an impression with the brand. The second thing we need to understand is what is an approximate value for each of those impressions, right? If we were to go out and try and buy that on the open market, how much would each of those impressions cost? Then the third thing we need to know, and this is really important, are those impressions positive or negative? Because look, we go to stores all the time, and yes, sometimes we have great experiences, other times it's awful. But on balance, we want to know, are most consumers in that location getting a positive or a negative experience? And so Net Promoter Score is really what we want to try and get to. So as soon as you understand we had 100 million customers, and every one of those impressions, we just sort of believe is worth $2 or $3 or whatever you decide as an executive, what the value of those impressions are, and then modified by the Net Promoter Score. Was it positive, negative, or neutral? Now you could potentially have a value, a media value that is in the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions potentially, that you have to add back into the productivity of your physical stores. And now you can start making different decisions. And I'll just give you an example. So, I've had terrible experiences in flagship stores. I've gone to some of the best flagship stores on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, had terrible experiences. Now, if we were looking only at the sales volume of those stores on the Champs-Élysées, we might conclude that they're worth a lot to the brand. We would never dream of closing them because, a store might do 50 million in sales. But that same store could be generating an equal $50 million in negative media impressions. It is literally a liability to the brand, and yet it stays open because it has good sales volume. Meanwhile, you may have a store on the other side of town that isn't on the Champs-Élysées, that doesn't do that kind of volume, but delivers awesome experiences to consumers. And if you're not measuring the media value, if you're looking only at sales, you might close the wrong store. You might close the store that's actually doing more for the brand in the long run. So that's why the media value of a store is so important.
Le pregunté a Doug acerca de cómo medir el éxito, cómo mido el éxito de la experiencia. Y me responde que básicamente tenemos que medirlo, como él dice, como publicidad. Dice, él fue con un ejecutivo de una empresa que tiene un altísimo tráfico a sus tiendas y le preguntó, ¿cuántas personas visitan tus tiendas en un año? Y dijo que aproximadamente 100 millones de personas visitan sus tiendas en un año. Y le dijo, a ver, ¿cuánto te costaría conseguir una agencia que hiciera anuncios de involucramiento con tus clientes durante 30 minutos o más para 100 millones de personas. Y básicamente la respuesta de esta persona fue: el costo de eso sería altísimo. Bueno, eso es exactamente lo que tenía con la tienda. Entonces, básicamente, y recordando su fórmula, Doug nos dice: para medir la efectividad de tu experiencia de compra, tienes que multiplicar 3 valores. Punto número 1, número de impresiones. ¿A cuántas personas llegas? Punto número 2, ¿cuánto vale cada impresión? Aquí tienes que estimar de cada persona que viene cuántos me compran eventualmente, no en el momento, cuántos me compran en los siguientes, en el periodo posterior, y cuánto me compran y por cuánto tiempo me van a seguir comprando para que yo pueda tener el valor que tiene ese cliente para mí a lo largo de su vida. Y finalmente, esto dice Doug, se tiene que ponderar con el nivel de satisfacción del cliente, con el Net Promoter Score. Porque puedo tener un punto de venta, él ponía el ejemplo, puedo tener un punto de venta con muchísimo tráfico. Él dice que él ha estado en Campos Elíseos en París, ha tenido ha visitado tiendas que venden muchísimo, pero que dieron una pésima experiencia. Esas son tiendas que, independientemente del valor que están ingresando a la caja, están generando un efecto negativo en la marca por la experiencia que se están llevando las personas, que seguramente le está costando a la marca más del valor que le está generando. I want to go with another question with one word that basically means threat for every retailer. And that word is Amazon. Should retailers become Amazon allies? Should retailers run away from them and open their own stores? How do we handle this monster?
Great question. And Carlos, this is the central theme actually of my new book, which is coming out this spring. It's important to understand that, while the pandemic has been really awful for a lot of retail companies, it has been like steroids for Amazon. And not just Amazon. Amazon, Alibaba, Mercado Libre, you could argue, is in there as well. Walmart is in that mix. Brands that have really benefited from this crisis. And that's a good thing and a bad thing if you're Amazon. Yes, of course, you want to build your sales, your revenue, and your profitability, and they have done that. But it also now sets new investor expectations. It sets new market expectations for the level of growth that you're going to continue to achieve. And so, could Amazon continue to thrive by selling more apparel, more electronics, more subscriptions, et cetera? Yes, they could, and they will. But we are also going to see a new level of evolution from companies like Amazon, and you're already starting to see it now. Amazon is moving into healthcare. Amazon is moving into education. Amazon is becoming a shipping company. They are buying financial startups. They're moving into banking and credit. So Amazon is moving now into far, far more lucrative and vulnerable categories. And when that happens, when that evolution actually is complete, what it means is that Amazon now will rely far less on its product marketplace for revenue. In fact, it would literally be able to run its marketplace at a break even just to bring consumers now into this ecosystem that includes health and banking and insurance and education. And that is a real threat to every business, not just retail, but every business. Yeah, because now all of a sudden your question is, if a consumer gets into that Amazon ecosystem, how do you ever get them out? They can live in there. They don't need to come out for anything. The question is, should you do business with Amazon or not? And I think the answer is, if you're going to do business with Amazon, do it knowing, number one, Amazon has no interest in your brand. They have no interest in helping your brand succeed. Your brand is merely data for Amazon. They'll bring you in, they'll learn as much as they can from your product or your category. And if it makes sense for them to do it, they will make a product that competes with you, and you'll be gone. As long as you understand that that's the nature of the relationship and you're going into it with eyes wide open, fine. I'm a believer that every brand owes it to themselves to ask a different question. And that question is, how great would we have to be how remarkable would our online or our in-store experience need to be that we didn't have to go to Amazon? We didn't have to make a deal with the devil, that we could control our own destiny, our own distribution, our own pricing, and succeed in Amazon's shadow. And so the book presents a model for how brands can go about doing that, how you can go
Wow.
about deciding where can we compete, where can we tell a deeper story than Amazon, and how do we go about creating experiences that consumers love. So, um, so the answer is sure, do business with Amazon, but do it knowing that they have no interest in the survival of your brand. And if you're not, and if you think that that's a scary proposition, then you owe it to yourself to build your own brand energy and gravity.
Wow. So if I was scared, now I'm even more scared. Thank you very much. Now I'm frightened. Okay. So les comparto. La pregunta que le hice a Doug es, ¿trabajar con Amazon o no? Amazon, tengo clientes que le llaman Amenazazon, esta marca que viene a comernos a todos aparentemente. Este monstruo que además, como nos responde Doug, ha venido a crecer, ha crecido muchísimo en la pandemia, ha crecido con esteroides, como dice Doug, pero dice que apenas estamos viendo el principio de esto. Lo que Doug nos transmite es esto y de verdad es una visión hacia el futuro de la que tenemos que estar muy conscientes para tomar nuestra decisión de si queremos aliarnos con este monstruo o no. Lo primero que me cuenta Doug es lo siguiente. Amazon cada vez ha crecido en nuevas categorías. Amazon ha crecido su participación, ha comprado empresas y se ha involucrado en salud, se ha involucrado en educación, se ha involucrado en transporte, se ha involucrado en finanzas, ha comprado empresas de bancos, incluso tiene ya su propio equipo para transportar sus productos. ¿Qué quiere decir con esto? Que lo que Amazon necesita es traer a un cliente a su ecosistema para venderle todos los servicios y productos que tiene, ¿de acuerdo? Eso quiere decir que Amazon va a estar dispuesto a venderle al cliente, incluso sin ganar dinero, con tal de hacerlo parte de su ecosistema. Eso lo hace a un competidor muchísimo más peligroso de lo que es el día de hoy, porque ahora ya no tiene nada que perder. Ahora sabe que a pesar de que yo te venda un producto sin ganar ni un solo peso, voy a poder utilizar tu nombre, voy a poder utilizarte como cliente para venderte quién sabe cuántas categorías más de productos y servicios. Y esto lo hace muchísimo más complejo. Así que Doug nos dice, si vas a entrar a trabajar con Amazon, si vas a empezar a vender con Amazon, tienes que tener claro lo siguiente. A Amazon no le importa tu marca. A Amazon no le interesa hacerte exitoso. Para Amazon, básicamente, tu marca es una fuente de datos que les permite a ellos comprender el valor que tiene una marca o una categoría de productos, y en el momento que vean que esa categoría de productos es útil, pues van a ir ellos mismos a fabricar algo similar y a sacarte del mercado. Así que Amazon no quiere hacerte crecer. Amazon no quiere tu éxito. Amazon te ve como una fuente de datos para entrar en nuevas categorías de producto. Y entonces lo que dice Doug, y con esto concluyo, es cada marca tiene que hacerse una pregunta diferente. Y la pregunta que tiene que hacerse esta marca es, ¿qué tan extraordinarios tenemos que ser? ¿Qué tan sorprendente tiene que ser nuestra experiencia para que podamos conquistar al cliente a pesar de Amazon, sin meternos y sin venderle nuestra alma al diablo, que eso significa vender a través de este canal? Así que me parece que es una pregunta importantísima que todos deberíamos de realizarnos. Por cierto, esto que nos comparte Doug es exactamente lo que viene en su nuevo libro, ¿de acuerdo? Que su nuevo libro habla acerca de justamente cómo será la resurrección del retail, el futuro de los negocios en un mundo post-pandémico. Por cierto, el comercial es que este libro está disponible ya en Amazon. Your book is on Amazon, right?
It is, and at physical bookstores. So hey, listen, if anyone has a choice, please go buy the new book from your local bookstore, please.
El libro de Doug está disponible en Amazon, pero también está disponible en tiendas físicas. Estará disponible. It's going to be available on the first trimester of this year, right?
That's right. The original date for publication was May 4th, but we're actually looking to try and make that earlier. So mid-April to early May. Yeah.
Ok, entonces el libro estará disponible a mediados de abril o inicios de mayo. No dejen de comprar los libros anteriores, porque claramente nosotros vivimos en una economía que va un poco retrasada contra lo que Doug está viendo en Estados Unidos o en Canadá. Doug, just to finish up, how can people reach you? Where can people keep following you and keep listening to your insights?
Sure. So if anyone is interested, please just go to Retail Profit, and that's PROPHET.com. Everything is there. All of our social links are there. There are articles, podcasts, virtually everything that you could want, and links to all the books and everything. So yeah, that's the place to go. RetailProfit.com.
Excelente. Si quieren conocer más acerca de todo el trabajo de Doug, ingresen a retailprofit.com. Ya puse la liga en el chat por si quieren consultarlo. Ahí podrán conocer todos sus artículos, su podcast, sus libros, incluso ponerse en contacto con él. Doug, thank you very much. This was very, very interesting, and it was a really, really nice talk. I didn't even realize it, and we have 1 hour talking right now. I know people are very thankful for what you've taught us today. And I know you're going to keep doing an impact and making an impact on all of us and all of the companies and all of the people that actually depend on whatever decisions we make. So thank you very much. Thank you for serving us.
Thank you very much, Carlos. And I just want to say again, thank you for having me. And I just, as a Canadian, I just want to say the level of kinship that I've always felt with the Mexican people, and so thank you very much again for having me. And hopefully we get through this pandemic soon, and we can get back to normal, and I can come back to places like Mexico City and enjoy myself once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Ha sido un placer. Gracias por escucharnos y nos vemos en el próximo episodio de Retail Stories. Doug, thank you very much. Buenas noches a todos.
Thank you, Carlos. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.